Well, as you can imagine, anger was the prevailing mood at UEFA today as they unveiled their rather bloated version of the Champions League as they see it. Alexander Ceferin, president of UEFA, stole the show. Lots of good lines from Alexander. I don't want to call them the dirty dozen, but he started things off. And then he went on to talk about some of the parties involved in this Super League breakaway effort. I've seen many things in my life. I was a criminal lawyer for 24 years, so I've seen different people, but I've never seen people like this. If I start with Ed Woodward, I didn't have much contact with him, but he called me on Thursday evening saying he's very satisfied with the Champions League reforms announced today, that he fully supports the reforms and that the only thing he would like to speak about is financial fair play. And obviously, he already signed something else. And then he moved on to Andrea Agnelli at Juventus, godfather to one of his children, interestingly. These two are close, Agnelli and Ceferin, or they were close. So he said of Agnelli, he's probably the biggest disappointment of all. I don't want to be too personal, but the fact is I've never seen a person lie so many times, so persistently. That he did was unbelievable. I spoke with him Saturday afternoon. He said, these are only rumours. Don't worry, nothing is going on. And then he said, I'll call you in 1 hour. He turned off his phone. The next day we get the announcement. I've seen many things in my life, but not a situation like that. Philippe Auclair, hello.
Hello, how are you?
They were good quotes. I had to start with them.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely.
Can I start with maybe the most interesting aspect, I suppose, or the biggest question mark is how likely is this breakaway effort to succeed, do you think?
Very unlikely. I think that the chances are extremely slim. The very quick reaction of UEFA certainly will play a role in that. The fact as well that you've seen German clubs and French clubs distantiate themselves immediately from this project means that doesn't really have much of a leg to stand on. So I would imagine that it will be a question of days rather than weeks before we see more chinks appearing in the armor and more clubs and some clubs within even the 12 deciding that it was really not worth the risk to carry on like that. To be absolutely honest, I'm a bit surprised by what looks more and more like the incompetence of this project.
I also don't see it happening. Now, a lot of people do really think it will happen and it's inevitable. So many hurdles need to be jumped. For instance, what's your sense of how the Premier League and La Liga and Serie A would see this? Like in the grand game of chicken, do the Premier League need Manchester United more than Manchester United need the Premier League?
Manchester United hasn't always been in the top division of English football. It's I think there's a great. I mean, the idea that we are more important than this is ridiculous, to be absolutely honest. Especially in the current circumstances, where I think if you were to have a poll today of people who are Premier League fans, and particularly Premier League fans in England or in the UK, you would find most of them so disgusted with their own clubs that they would be quite happy to see them relegated. I'm one of them, I must admit. I don't care what will happen to my club in terms of points deducted relegation. To be honest, I'm disgusted like everybody else. The idea that a club or a couple of clubs or several clubs are more important than the division that they're in is just simply ludicrous. It might make sense in terms of the kind of audience that they're garnering abroad, for example, perhaps in territories where people are not so-called legacy fans. An expression that I'm sure you've appreciated when you saw it used. Mm-hmm. But I think elsewhere, to be absolutely honest, Chelsea was in the second division not that long ago. Leeds were in the championship not that long ago, just a couple of years ago. And look at them. They're one of the main attractions of the league today. So it moves very, 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 very quickly. And this case of hubris, thinking that, you are so important that the league cannot live without you, is just simply ridiculous, to be absolutely honest.
It's hubris and also a recognition that things do change and they want to guard against that. I mean, the US owners in particular, I'm sure they look with horror at the notion that they don't know the following season whether or not they'll have 25% of their revenue coming in from the Champions League. It goes against their sporting world. I'm sure that's part of their thinking. They don't think this is a way to run a business. So it's hubris, absolutely, but it is probably also a recognition that things do change and they want a lock stock guarantee that things won't change for them financially. That's the motivation here ultimately.
The motivation, I think, goes deeper than that. I think they believe that there is an existential threat against their domination, financial domination. Look at the clubs which have been the signatories of this agreement, the Dirty Dozen. You will see an awful lot of them are in dire straits financially speaking.
Yeah.
The Italian clubs is desperate. When you look at Milan, it's a complete basket case. Inter is not very far behind. Juventus as well, which is winning nothing these days anyway. Who cares? And we're actually, by the way, they were in the Serie B not that long ago after a few shenanigans of their own. These clubs, many of them have in common is very difficult financial situations. Liverpool is another one.
Yeah.
Manchester City has just posted, I think, 172 million euros loss over the 2019-2020 season. I don't know what the 2020-21 season is going to be like, but it's not going to be better. So they're faced with this horrible situation for people who are full of money, which is to have to spend it.
Yeah.
To actually stay afloat, which of course they're better equipped than anybody else in football because they've got very deep pockets and financial fair play has basically been suspended. So they could do it, but they're so greedy that they want to have more and more and more money. And therefore, this is one of the reasons why this whole project, which has been, I know, it's been preparation for years and years. Some would say even decades. I saw a piece in the Gazzetta which showed Berlusconi was talking about it in 1988. But this is different. And I think they're panicking. It's partly it's hubris, and partly it's panic because the economic and financial model they've been living on is simply unsustainable. Barcelona has got €1 billion debt.
Well, Bayern Munich make that point as well. So in their statement where they say they're not getting involved and they're convinced the current structure guarantees a reliable foundation, they add all clubs in Europe should work together, and they pointedly at the end of their statement talk about the cost structures, especially player salaries, agent fees need to be brought into line with revenues. And that does highlight the ultimate issue here, that the system is broken. You have a number of clubs who have oil money or billionaire owners, and then you have the old money types trying to keep up with them. Those in Italy, for instance, you have Manchester United having to generate revenue after revenue to stay as, richest club in the world to compete. Barcelona can't compete. So the system does not work. The system is broken, and UEFA's financial fair play has been exposed for the charade that it is. I mean, statute of limitations against Manchester City was just an embarrassment to all concerns as the reason for that case failing, which should have been a watertight case otherwise. So ultimately, this desperation is a product of a broken system. The Bayern statement tries to get at that a little bit.
It is, and the extraordinary thing as well is the Bayern statement happens on the day when Karl-Heinz Rummenigge replaces Andrea Agnelli at the head of the ECA, which has now been vacated by the Dirty Dozen. And on the day as well when UEFA has basically put in place a system which is in itself already a Super League, but doesn't have this name. The changes to the Swiss system from 2024-2025 season onwards have been agreed today, and they will basically mean that we will have something which is very much like, it's a kind of Super League, which dare not say its name, but with relegation, promotion, so it's more acceptable. It's just an extension of I would say the privileges that were granted to the super elite within European football. So it's also quite interesting to see that in a way this allows the whole scandal allows UEFA to get away with what is in itself already a scandal.
Yeah, and that was driven by the big boys. That was UEFA trying to placate the big boys. Yeah,
absolutely. From the very beginning, you can say that UEFA has been in bed with the big boys, including especially Bayern Munich, from very, very early on. Bayern were one of the main clubs involved in the whole structuration of this, and also in the setting of the FFP rules, because it actually benefited them from the beginning. So we shouldn't have any whataboutery, because that's dreadful, but we should remember that UEFA is putting in place a system that in normal circumstances would also provoke the irk and the anger of fans absolutely everywhere in Europe.
Yes, just to give people a sense of the money and how the Super League Dirty Dozen intend for the money to work. So JP Morgan will put forward 3.5 billion up front. So straight away, the 15 clubs, all of these 15 clubs that they're hoping to ultimately get to from 12, they would get a 350 million sign-in fee. Now, to put that in context, Bayern last year got 90 million for winning the Champions League. So straight away, 350 million up front. And then once this thing gets running, they estimate that they'll generate 4 billion per year TV money, which after certain costs will leave 3.15 billion. So let's call it 3 billion. Of that 3 billion, 32% of the 3 billion gets shared amongst the founding 15 clubs. The next 32% of that 3 billion goes to the 15 clubs again and the 5 clubs who managed to make it in for that year. And then 35% goes according to finishing places, who wins, who doesn't win, who gets to the semi-final, etc.
Yeah.
I mean, this is stunning money. And let's not, let's dismiss this for what it is, which is nonsense. But even the solidarity payments. So they're saying, look, we're going to put away a lot of money for the pyramid. They're talking about 400 million a year. Interestingly, UEFA only give 240 million a year. Maybe that's offset by the extra 16 teams not involved. But you take my point. There's so much money slushing around. They can even, in this barefaced grab, they can even be more generous than UEFA are to the lesser teams in a perverse kind of a way.
They are not more generous than UEFA when you go actually into the detail
I'm sure,
of it.
Yeah.
When you go into the way that the UEFA money is distributed, they are not more generous. That's a complete red herring.
Yeah.
The question of the finances is one that fascinates me because JP Morgan might be financing but not investing any money. They're not investing 1 cent in this Super League. The money is not coming from JP Morgan. And that's a question that I wish was really high on the agenda, because what JP Morgan is doing is what any bank would be doing, which is basically to give you a line of credit. Mm-hmm. It's exactly, if I were going to a mortgage company and I would ask them, okay, can you lend me 250 grand so I can buy myself, probably in Dublin, a studio flat, with above a sewer, I would imagine, something like that. Anyway, some money to buy.
With our prices, Philippe, that will cost you about $1 million. So let's call it that.
Okay, let's call it that. And you say, okay, I want that money, and you lend the money. You're giving the line of credit. Are you going to say that the bank has invested in your flat? Of course not. It's just lent you money. And JP Morgan, that's exactly what they're doing. They're providing a financial service, which is they're giving a line of credit, but they are not putting a cent in it, and which is one thing that I think almost nobody has mentioned. That where is the money coming from? No transparency. It can come from 2 things. It can come either from a broadcaster, and when I say broadcaster, probably a digital platform. I don't think that a traditional broadcaster would have this kind of money available. We're more talking about one of the big guys. You're talking Google, Netflix, Amazon, one of those guys. Then the other possibility is that you have some of these very eager nation states which are willing to invest into sport for sports washing reasons, would go into that. We know, for example, that the grandiose Club World Cup project, Gianni Infantino's big project, was supposed to be underwritten or actually financed by Saudi Arabia. I don't know. I'm just giving you possible hypothesis. One thing I can tell you for sure, JP Morgan are not putting any money in this.
Yeah.
So the money is not coming from an American bank. The money is coming from somebody else. And of course, none of these guys has got the guts to tell you where it's coming from, because possibly you can mortgage future earnings. But if you mortgage future earnings, believe me, if you go to JP Morgan and tell them, guys, we're going to make shitloads of money, with apologies for my English here, we're going to make loads of money. And they will say, how? And you will say, well, we've got an agreement with the broadcaster. So it's all in place, because if it's not in place, JP Morgan wouldn't be involved. Yeah. But they're not telling us the truth. There's another reason not to like these people very much.
Sure. There are so many strands to this. Like, I haven't even mentioned the fact that Sefrin has said there'll be no international football for the players, or Jesper Molloy, Danish UEFA member, as I'm sure you know, has said that Chelsea, Man City and Real Madrid will be out of the Champions League by Friday. Same for Arsenal and Manchester United. in the Europa League. So even, that is such a seismic move if they make the move. What about the no international football? The legalities of that, can that be enforced? I mean, a lot of the players, I'm not saying all, but a lot of the players won't like that.
I don't think that legally there's a chance whatsoever of seeing players being prevented from joining their national teams for the 2020 Euro.
Okay.
Further than that, it's a difficult one to judge, because there have been a couple of interesting cases with players, sports people, being involved with in other sports, i.e. figure skating is one and wrestling is another. You would think that they're minor sports. Yeah, but legally it counts. And
Sure.
In both cases, it was found by the European Commission and by various courts in continental Europe that the banning those people, those athletes who were competing in parallel or breakaway leagues would actually constitute restraint of trade. Okay. So therefore they were allowed to do that. And it's a legal minefield. One thing I hope is that it will force the European Parliament, the European Commission, to look at the situation of sport and to look at the legalities of it. In a case of a Euro 2020, there's absolutely no way UEFA or FIFA could possibly ban players who will not have taken part in a competition that does not exist.
Yes.
It's as simple as that.
Yes. So a difficult final question then. With all the legalities, with all the various strands, with all the bluff and bluster which is going on, I'm sure, at various levels, and the politicking behind the scenes, and the PSG and the German club stance, how do you think this will play out, and over what kind of time frame?
It's very difficult to predict, because what is happening at the moment is pure chaos. And I don't think what is happening now was necessarily planned. What I'm hearing is that the leaks which got into the Sunday papers were not originating from the Super League themselves, and that they were in a way hoist by your own petard, I believe is the expression. Mm-hmm. And that therefore the response has been very scattergun-like. You will have noticed that that the statements were coming one after the other. There was no real, it didn't seem like it was something which was very well orchestrated.
No, there was nothing slick about this at all.
No, it's dreadful. And my personal feeling, it's a feeling at the moment, is that this will peter out very, very quickly. And that a few because at the moment we've only got 12 whose names we know. We thought we knew the names of 3 others. We're not going to name them because they decided not to come out. And of these 12, some of them seem to me very lukewarm. I'm thinking of Barcelona in particular. And I would, given the seriousness of the threats that have been made against the breakaway clubs, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a few other people breaking ranks and possibly I don't know how they're going to do it, because imagining Florentino Perez or J.W. Henry with the tail between their legs, if you excuse the simile, I would enjoy it greatly, I think.
Let the groveling commence.
It would be absolutely. Seeing Florentino Perez grovel would be, honestly, what a dream. And but I'm not sure how it's going to happen. But to be honest, I don't think there is a chance in hell that this Super League is going to happen.
Yeah. And was your sense that they expected it to happen genuinely, or was this always a bit of brinksmanship?
I think there was a lot of brinksmanship, and I think sometimes when you brinksman, that's not a verb, but we'll use it a little bit too much, and you're not on top of what you've unleashed. You've unleashed the hounds of hell, and sure enough, they've taken you there. So again, not many tears will be shed for these people, but I do think that in this case that there's an element of hubris again. That they think these people think that we can't do without them, that we cannot live without Manchester United, Real Madrid, or whatever, and that in a way I think they probably are surprised by the strength of the reaction, the depth of the reaction, and the violence of the reaction too. Can they do a U-turn? I don't know. I mean, to be honest, Joe, I mean, for the last 24 hours, we've all been going, what? And I think we might do that for a few more days yet. And if on Friday, as Mr. Muller says, those clubs are excluded from the Champions League of the Europa League, well, what can you say?
Yeah, extraordinary.
Lawyers, I'm going to have a field day, that's for sure.
For sure. Listen, Philippe, I know you're super busy today. Thank you so much for your time. Much
pleasure.
appreciated. Yeah, great to have you on. Philippe Auclair.